So I'm covering a lot of content today. I had to pick and choose which pieces to share with you from these platforms. I focused on what I thought would bring the most value to you, whether you have existing campaigns or are just getting started. But there's a lot of resources we'll be sharing at the end of this presentation, and they're designed for you guys to take resources home with you so you can study up, the latest updates that are coming out, and you can just really stay in the loop as you work to grow your own success with digital marketing. So I want to start off by talking about the landscape. It is changing very frequently. Just let me tell you why I think this is going to be the best thing for your business, because it's changing. It's kind of unusual, but I want to start with talking about the generation right now, which is millennials. Millennials are a new force to be reckoned with. They've overtaken the baby boomers as the largest adult population in America, and that was in 2019. So that was a couple years ago. So we're behind already. Millennials now range ages 24 to 39. It's 1981 to 1996. So I know a lot of these older generations still will always view millennials as little babies, as young, but they're getting older and their buying power is undeniable. And that's why I wanted to start by talking about this, because there's a good chance that most of your target customers, these millennials, are now in those ranges, right? That they are your customer that you're looking for. If they're not, that's completely okay. This definitely still applies, but I think this is really powerful because we're going to need to address them in a different way than we've been doing in the past.
Hey, Jacob, can I add to that too?
Absolutely.
Hey, everybody. Sorry, I had a little bit of an internet problem. So my internet went out and it's back up. I'm Daniel. I'm the CEO of Built by Love. So everything that Jacob said is obviously, I mean, it's spot on. And in case you're saying to yourself, well, my business isn't focused on millennials, or, you know, I've been in business for X amount of years, or how does this apply to me? I think without getting too far into a marketing discussion about psychology and things like that, the one thing I can promise to you is this, is that we can all agree that our business is doing business with humans, right? We are marketing to humans, and at the core of everything we do, how we're communicating value, how we're selling, and how we're servicing our clients and customers is that we're dealing with humans. You might be saying, well, Daniel, that sounds kind of obvious. What's the point of that? And here's the point, is that at the core of the human mind, everything is based off of trust and value, okay? If someone does not trust you, they are not going to want to do business with you. And if they're not getting value out of a relationship, whether that is a friendship, a business relationship, or an intimate relationship, there has to be a value exchange of, hey, I'm investing my time. Time equals money in business, and I'm getting value back out of that, right? So we have to make sure that everything that we're doing in business, whether it's doing advertising, whether it's marketing, whether it's selling, whatever we're doing, whatever we're putting out there in the world, we have to be establishing trust, and by delivering value, that we're the experts that can help them to get whatever problem or pain they have, and that's why they're considering doing business with you, whatever that is. Whether their car is broke down, whether they need a strategic advisor, whether they need a news source, whatever those things are, they need to trust that you're going to deliver that value for them and that you're going to do right by them. And so going back to what Jacob said, the millennial generation and the younger generation, they are expecting authenticity way, way more than any other generation before, where they want to know your story. They want to know the source of where your products come from or why you do what you're doing. They want to know those things, and they want to actually establish a relationship. That's tribe mentality. And so that's the key of driving anything going forward. If there's anything that you take away from our session today, it's that you have to have trust and value even before you start to sell. That's the key to success in everything you're going to do going forward in today's digital age for marketing. Should we start to dive in, Jacob? What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it. I will say, I did want to bring up one more one more thing about the millennials is that Daniel was hinting towards it too, is they're loyal, they're yearning for trust. And over 54% of millennials prefer to purchase online, right? We are early adopters to technology. And so this is very common. We are used to the online digital age. And so what does that mean for our businesses today? And I think having a seamless website and user experience is going to be absolutely essential to having a successful business online today. It just has to happen because that's what millennials are used to. And now as millennials become larger and their buying power becomes greater, we need to pivot our marketing strategies to address these markets, because if we're not doing it now, then we're already late, right? We need to be doing it now. And that's kind of what I wanted to start off the presentation today, is talking about how the markets are changing. And it's important to keep tabs on this kind of stuff because it can affect our strategy and how effective we are. So
yeah, just to do a broad paint stroke in regards to consumption online, whether that's just media consumption, reading, watching videos, spending time online, all the way through making online purchases. So over the few years, especially around Black Friday and during the holidays, right? And usually Thanksgiving kicked off that sales cycle where the media would talk about, this is the performance of sales, and this is the performance, how many people are buying online. And a few years ago, it was hovering around like 45%. And then it went to 55, and then it went to 65, and now it's over 70%. And so the one thing that, COVID obviously has been a struggle for everybody across the world, but the one thing that it has done, it has pushed the digital age so much farther. It has leaped and bound over what's happening. So online events are happening. And for the first time ever, all demographics, all age groups who maybe wouldn't buy online or wouldn't spend a lot of time online for whatever reasons, they've been forced due to COVID to go online, shop online, trust online. And so that part is never going back. So if there's anything as a business owner you can start to think about is, how can I ensure that I'm attracting the right customers and doing the right things online, because we are now officially in the digital age, and that will continue to move so.
And this is great. It provides a massive opportunity for you business.
Yes, it's basically the Wild West now for anyone who can grasp onto that. For sake of time, let's jump into it. So I'm going to cover the first few slides just for all of us, and then I'm going to hand it over to Jacob. So what we're going to be covering is, we're just going to do a digital marketing overview, and we kind of started to paint that landscape now. We're going to cover over some tips and tricks, and obviously we just have a short amount of time with you all today. So we're going to try to be as succinct as possible. If there's questions or other things, we can definitely answer them at the end of the session, and we'll give you our information should you want to reach out to us afterwards. We already kind of started to talk about getting to know your customer. We'll dive a little bit deeper in there. And then towards the end, we're going to provide some free resources and tools. And the BBB of Oklahoma, I believe, is going to be so kind to make this presentation available to you all after. So there are links and things like that that you'll be able to grab. And then finally, how to know if you should hire an agency or a freelancer or do it yourself. A lot of times we get questions like that, and we'll kind of paint through those and give you kind of some direction. If we can move on. So how do we get more customers? That's the million-dollar question, right? Do you want to go to the next slide, Jacob? And then do you want to start talking about that?
Yeah. So we started with some common problems, and we work with a lot of businesses, and so obviously we can get some trends when we hear the same problems. And I'm confident to say that many of you probably have some similar problems or have asked yourself these similar questions, right? How do you get more leads for your business, or you don't have enough, or you're unsure which marketing channel you should be using? Obviously, if you're not sure which channel you should be using, you're probably wondering where to start, right? Where to put your best foot forward. There is a lot of marketing channels to use, and there's even more growing. You have TikTok now and other channels that are springing up where it provides opportunities to advertise, but just again, it's another channel that you need to learn. So we're going to talk about where to start and how you should know which channel to pick. We're also going to be talking about Facebook and Google. and how they keep changing, and so give you some great ways that you can stay up to date with the latest things that are coming down for advertising and for digital marketing. So we're going to have some solutions to these problems today. But before we, I think go any further, we should probably give you guys an introduction so you know who you're talking to.
Absolutely. And Casey's going to join us. Here she is to do our formal introduction. So we don't have to formally introduce ourselves today. All right. So welcome to our 2021 Trust Talk series. If you've never attended these events before, what they are is a monthly lunch and learn series that BBB puts together where we partner with some business experts from varying industries, varying backgrounds to talk about kind of some hot business topics. So digital marketing, we know that's a big one and has even become more so a part of our lives, or it should have been in the past year because everybody was online. And if your business wasn't online, then you had to quickly pivot to figure out how you were going to do that. So thank you so much to Built by Love agency for partnering with us on this event. Alison and the Built by Love team are going to work you through some really awesome things today. So looking forward to giving you some content there. So Daniel, CEO of Built by Love, is an award-winning marketer that has worked with Fortune 500 companies, New York Times best-selling authors, and business owners from around the world. He's obviously the Chief Executive Officer of Built by Love, which is an award-winning full-service digital marketing agency. He is also responsible for developing the Marketing Ramp, a proven marketing blueprint that has helped businesses across the world achieve marketing clarity with phenomenal results. So Daniel, so very excited to have you today. Jacob, also with the Built by Love team, Jacob's professional passion, which I'm sure we can all tell. I see his face light up as he's talking about helping businesses. He loves to help them grow their bottom line through paid advertising. He believes that obtaining sustainable, life-changing results for his clients' businesses is his calling. In his role at Built by Love for the past 2 years, Jacob has had the unique privilege to indulge in all of the things that we had just talked about. Jacob previously spent 2 years managing an elite book of business by himself made up of small businesses and large brands while growing a marketing team to over 200,000 reoccurring revenue for the company, helping hundreds of clients grow their businesses so that they could expand, hire new employees, and reinvest for more profit. I think that's all something we're looking to do in our own businesses as well. And last but certainly not least, Alison Abbott, our VP of Communication here at BBB serving Central Oklahoma. Alison has 14 years of marketing strategy, digital marketing, and communication experience. She has led agency and in-house marketing teams to success through representing small one-shop to international brands in nearly 30 different industries. We've done a lot of different things. Thank goodness for bringing Alison on board, and she's helped us pivot some of our marketing and communications in-house, and we've done some really cool events and different things throughout the past couple of years. So we're so very fortunate to have her on our team. So that is what I have for introductions. Thank you guys so much. And if you've got any questions throughout the event, feel free to send those over to BB Marketing and I'll be in the background. Casey, thanks for that. And just a quick other note here, Built by Love is actually our BBBs, so BBB serving Central Oklahoma digital agency. So you'll get to hear a little bit later too. I'm excited to share with you sort of a mini case study of how our BBB has partnered with them and some of the cool things we've done to drive leads and essentially membership for our BBB. So teeing that up for you guys because it's a heck of a case study. So I'm excited for folks to see it. So before we get there, the cool stuff, how do we get there, Jacob, right? Because a lot of folks you and I talked about when we worked together to create this presentation, they don't really know where to start. There's so many things. Do you start with copy? Do you start with tracking? Which platforms? How and where to get started, right? So let's take them through some of the things to consider as they dig in.
Great. We're going to be covering advertising, digital marketing like we talked about. So let's jump into where exactly we start, right? Who we serve. And this is why, the reason why this slide is one of the first slides of the presentation, because I think that understanding your customer is extremely vital and is the pulse to your marketing strategy. So here's a couple questions designed for you. Now these are going to be different based on your industry, what your answers are. And so I want you to think of them. They're supposed to prompt you to really think about where your customer spends their time, what channels they're actually using, whether that's Facebook, Google, LinkedIn. How does your product or service solve their problems? That's a really great one, because if you really understand that answer and you know what problems your customers have and you know where your product or service fits into their solution, a marketing strategy will be born from that. So that is a really big one. I often ask clients as they onboard with us and as we get to know clients, I want to know how they solve their customers' problems. The better you understand that question, the more powerful your marketing strategy will be. Also, do you have multiple buyer personas? Are there different customer segments within the individual that you're targeting that you can actually break out? Because your messaging will change based on who your customer is. So if there's multiple personas or different types of customers that your product fits, then you need to break them out and have a different strategy for each one. Maybe that's just simply your offer needs to change, or maybe that's your copy or your content needs to change. So making sure that our marketing is detailed and targeted for your customer will be essential for a successful marketing campaign.
Jacob, really quickly there, sorry to cut into you. Daniel, like Casey mentioned when she introduced Daniel, Built by Love and Daniel have created a really great process. If you don't know what your buyer persona is, or you're reimagining that because you've maybe re-engineered your business in the last year, because we all had to in some capacities or several capacities, those will be really great resources that we can share out with you from Built by Love so that you could start that evaluation if you need to take another look at that.
Right.
Yeah, and if I can, I'll just add one more thing to what Jacob said. In case any of you who are listening in and watching this and you're wondering, well, gosh, what are my customers' problems? I don't know what I should talk to them about. If you figure out the questions that they're asking or the problems that they have, right, and why they're seeking your business, whatever those problems are that you know your business can address, those are great starting points to write content, whether that's a blog or do a video or create something like an article or a lead magnet that you will be able to use to attract their attention, because you will be identifying the people that have those problems. Those are the people that will be interested in reading that content or getting that article that you're offering. And of course, through that content and through that pain point, you'll be qualifying them. They'll see that you're the expert. And then, of course, the next step that you're going to be asking them to do after you give them some value and show that you're the expert and they can trust you is for them to have a conversation with you or for them to buy your product or service. And I'm going to hand that back over to Jacob because he's going to start to walk you through how you're going to do those things and all that kind of good stuff.
Right. So what I'm getting at here is that the better we understand our customer, naturally is going to point us to which marketing channel we need to be using to actually reach our customers. So my question is, where do we start? And we talked about this briefly in our introductions and in our overview, but it can be very daunting when you look at the channels that we have and you've got your budget, right? You've got your budget that you want to spend to try to get more leads. That was the problem that we started with. Which channel do we pick? And that's what I want to address today. And we're going to share some best practices for a couple of these channels, but no, there's a lot more content that we could be sharing, but we'll make sure we include those in the free resources at the back. So ultimately though, understanding these channels and how they reach your audience is going to be important to your strategy. And we're going to share some best practices today. I will say though, before you start investing your ad dollars, you don't have to be an expert to create and launch campaigns, but if this is something that you don't even want to deal with, or if it's a headache or if it's intimidating for you, you can always hire a professional to do that for you. Many marketing strategies include a combination of these channels. So it's not just one. Sometimes it's a multi-channel approach. I know for BBB with Alison, we actually advertise on Google and Facebook and Instagram. We use all three of those channels to drive a successful campaign that in the end really drives new A/B applications. So we're going to talk more about that later in our case study. So I will say too that Google and Facebook and Instagram, when I say Facebook, just know that I'm including Instagram in that. I kind of refer to them as one. they are very different from one another. So we're going to talk about those differences and how that will also influence your strategy. So I want to get into this here, audiences and levers. So now that we understand, we've asked some questions about who your customer is, you're thinking about how your product or service solves their problems. We need to understand the differences between Google and Facebook so we know which channel to pick. So where are they spending their time? Is it Google? Is it Facebook? Is it a combination of both? Well, how do these channels differ so I know what strategy to even build for them? In the old days of running Facebook ads, all you had to do was create a campaign, you launched it, you had an ad or two out there, and then you had a remarketing campaign for all visitors that landed on your site in 30 days. And it worked, you know, you were able to actually drive leads and it was effective. I will say we need to shift out of that mindset because that is not what is working now. What I want to share with you is that customer needs are dynamic. They're changing. So we need to be speaking to people in different messages, different offers, different copy. We cannot expect people to convert, become a form submission, give us a call, or buy our product if we continue to serve them the same ad over and over and over again. So having different offers, you know, different messages is going to be essential to building your marketing strategy. Now, if you look at the slide deck, you'll see that marketing funnel on the right. Now, I know funnel is a term that gets used often with marketing. The reason why is because it's an easy way to visually understand that people are psychologically in a different place as they interact with your brand than they were the first couple of times. For example, if they don't know who you are, you need to tell them who you are. And they're not ready to buy just because they saw an ad from you. Just like you get tired of seeing the same ad on your Facebook feed over and over and over again, I can promise you your customers do too. So because our customers have changing needs, one of the things that I think can influence, one of the levers you can pull in your own marketing campaigns to influence performance is making sure that you are speaking to and talking to your customers during all parts of the funnel. And that's easier said than done, but what that means is that, again, your copy, your offers are different at the top of the funnel versus at the bottom of the funnel for someone who's been engaging with you, spent time on your site, liked your Facebook page. That person is going to be much more ready or warm to actually pick up the phone and give you a call versus someone who just saw your ad. So on a high level, I think, you know, one of the best ways to build a good Facebook or Google strategy is just to make sure, ask yourself that, am I speaking to all parts of the funnel?
Jacob, really quick, let's give a little context, because while that makes sense to you and I, how to write ad copy for where people are in the different funnels, others may not have that same experience. So I'll use BBB as an example. So for example, you all attended this event today, and we're so thankful, obviously, that you did. But let's say for awareness sake, if I'm looking at the funnel here on screen, that you've never heard about BBB. You have no idea what they do. So we want to put ads out that tell you a little bit about BBB and or drive you right to our website or to a page about our events so you can learn more about that. That's awareness, okay? And then interest or decision making. Hey, you've attended, maybe if we're doing Jacob a retargeting campaign, for example, thanks for attending one of our events. Come to next month's events. Here's what our lineup for April 2021, because we're almost at the end of March. So just kind of giving you a flavor for different types of copy. And of course, that's more events related, not necessarily leads for new memberships for BBB, which is a whole other type of copy set and conversation, right? But stacking your copy and looking down the funnel and how you want to drive them in the calls to action that you want people to take.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's just making sure that we are really addressing our customers, because you can't expect them to convert if we continue to hit them with the same message. And we need to make sure that our audiences and our content speaks to different parts of the funnel. So I think having a well-rounded strategy is essential when you're looking to build something out on Facebook, and this also applies to Google and or LinkedIn. So this is something that can be applied to all your channels, whether you have campaigns now or you're just getting started out. This is a question you should be asking yourself as you build out your strategy.
And Jacob, quickly, how often should folks change out their creative? That's a question I used to get on in my agency life a lot.
Well, it depends on your budget. You know, if you're spending $100 a day on Facebook, you should be changing out your creative every other week. But if you're spending $1,000 a day on Facebook, you should be changing out your creative every other day. So it largely depends on how much budget you have to spend on that platform. But Facebook specifically does require much more maintenance when it comes to changing out creative and just consistent testing.
And for those who are wondering, well, why when you spend more money do you have to change out your creative more often? It's because the more money you spend gives you more exposure to the audience. So as Jacob was mentioning, that's called ad fatigue. Like, people have seen it so much because you're spending a lot of money to get impressions, that it's like, oh, I've already seen it, I already know what that is, I'm not interested, or I'll look at it later. So creating new content, new things for people to look at should, in the ideal world with the right audience, engage them and get them to do what you want them to do. Click on your ad and go to that content.
And this does apply for Google and Facebook and LinkedIn. So this isn't just for Facebook in itself, but absolutely to what Daniel said. Now, I want to shift gears here to Google and share with you a couple best practices. I'm going to be going back and forth, but to share a couple best practices on Google when you're learning, because we had a couple in our meeting today that are looking at just getting started, right? Where do I begin? Well, here's a couple things about Google that I think will help point to where you should start. Understanding different campaign types. This also applies to Facebook. There's different types of campaigns. With Google, there's a search network, and picking the right campaign types will help ensure that you really are putting your best foot forward. So search is keyword-based campaigns. So for example, if I have a product or a service, if I target those keywords, people are actively searching for those terms, which means if I think of the funnel, they are at the bottom. They are raising their hand and saying, I want to buy from you. I'm looking for this. So again, that's Facebook and Google differing there. You're understanding that there's a different intent, because Google on a search campaign is much more high intent. What does that mean? It means it's going to be a little bit more expensive, because it's like an auction. The more advertisers that buy those keywords, the more expensive and competitive it is. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing, because competition means there's opportunity and there's a space. So display is another great campaign type where you can drive a lot of brand awareness. So top of the funnel, a lot of eyeballs to your website, and it's very cheap to do. Another thing is YouTube, and video is a great way that we can, streaming right now is higher than it's ever been because of COVID. So YouTube's a valuable resource that you can use to drive more brand awareness and to create that customer loyalty and to get that interaction and engagement that sometimes keyword campaigns can't do. So video is a great place. And then we also have shopping and app campaigns, or for driving app downloads. These are less common, but they can be a great resource for you to use.
And I'll add one quick thing to that. So for those of you who are just getting started or want to up your game for any of your online ads that you might currently be doing, for those of you that are like, well, where should I start? Should I start with Google or Facebook? So Jacob did a great job covering it, but I like to give easy examples, okay? So if you've got a plumbing leak and water is leaking into your basement on a Saturday afternoon, are you going to go to Facebook and message, put a post on Facebook to say, hey, my basement is starting to flood. I'm wondering who I should call. Does anyone have any recommendations? You're likely not going to do that, right? You're going to go to Google and you're going to type emergency plumber, and whatever's going to show up, you're probably going to click on one of the top 3, call them, and whoever can book with you, you're going to, that looks like they can get the job done and you feel like you can trust them. You're going to book that person. Right? But if it's not something with immediate intent, like you're ready to buy that service right then and there, you're likely going to go to Facebook and you likely might say, hey, I'm looking to go on vacation next month, assuming COVID doesn't exist, right? And I would like to know if anyone knows of any great resorts in Maui, right? Yeah, we're looking at a couple different ones, and you'll get some feedback. And then from that feedback, you'll kind of check out those sites, but you're not going to necessarily book yet. You're going to do a little bit more research, and you're going to start to develop a relationship. And moving through what Jacob had mentioned, that funnel, right? That funnel, top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel. That's all fancy marketing talk for when you're at the top, you're in the awareness stage, you're looking. You're not ready to buy, but you want to learn more. And then as you move through and you get educated and you narrow down your search results, or you narrow down your options, and you really got a feel for what you want to buy, it usually comes down to one or two, right? And that's bottom of funnel. And so Jacob's kind of touched on that, and he'll probably touch a little bit more on different channels and things like that. But you will ideally want to use different content and different strategies and different channels, because those are the people that maybe they don't know of you yet. They don't even know you exist. Well, you want to market to those people too. You want to develop a relationship over time. And then when it's ready for them to use your service, your product, they'll know you exist and they'll go right to you. They won't go on Google looking for it, right? And then the shorter intent, those people that already know that they need something and they're ready to buy, those people will likely go to Google if they're doing some final searches, okay? Jacob, back over to you.
Yeah, no, it leads right into a quick way to identify if Google could be a good source of a good campaign to start with, is actually use the keyword planner. This is a free tool that you guys can use. If you have campaigns already, you can still use this. If you don't have an ad account, you can get one created very easily. I've linked it in this presentation where you can go and actually create a free ad account. You don't have to start putting ad dollars behind it to build this out. But ultimately, you go to Google's keyword planner, and you start thinking of the top 15 to 30 keywords that your customers are actively searching online. And you can type them in, hit generate report, and Google will actually give you additional ideas off of those keywords, which is really, really helpful. And then what's the most valuable is that Google will actually give you a projection of the average monthly search volume for those terms. So that way, when you're building your first campaign or looking at your existing campaigns, you can identify keywords and how much search volume they have and how expensive they're going to be so that you can build a strategy around that. I will say, we talked about the plumber example. When you're building a keyword search campaign, it's important to think about keyword intent, meaning if I am looking for a plumber, I'm not just going to target the word plumber because I'm going to get lots of search queries for plumber. It could be a blog, or I want to learn to become a plumber. But if I'm targeting plumber near me or local plumber, that's going to show a lot more intent to come to my service and actually buy versus the word plumber. So as you build out your keyword campaigns, be thinking about the intent of the keyword that you are targeting, because that will shape your strategy and will make your keyword campaign much more successful.
Jacob, here's another example that I used to counsel folks on in regard to search as well, is think about what people, aka your customers, would actually search. So for example, if you're a cupcake shop and your strawberry cupcakes are called Princess Swirl with Sprinkles, people aren't going to search that. They don't necessarily know that your strawberry cupcakes are called that, right? If they're not yet familiar with your brand. So you should be targeting keywords around strawberry cupcakes or cupcake shops or things like that. So layman's terms is really a best practice when you're thinking about keywords for your business, because while you may have branded it or called it something, or you know the specialized term for your industry, others don't necessarily have that same knowledge or lingo.
That's great context. And I get this question a lot too, is what if there's no search volume for my brand yet? You know, I'm a new business. No one knows who I am. No one's searching my keywords. So if I target that keyword, my ads aren't going to show. Well, that means we're going to have to take a different approach. It means you might have to utilize display or video as a way to drive more brand awareness. And as you do that, you'll actually drive more searches for your brand in the long term. Or maybe you have to use Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram as a way to reach your target customer and drive more brand awareness, because it doesn't exist yet on Google.
Correct.
Where Jacob left off was talking about Facebook audiences. So the first step that you're going to want to do is you can go to business.facebook.com And when you go there, of course, it's going to ask you to log in with Facebook. That's their security measure. And they're going to give you the ability to get your own, for free, of course, pixel. In case you're wondering, well, what is a Facebook pixel? I'm going to give you a quick overview. It's basically a piece of code that you're going to want to install on your website. And if you're doing anything like landing pages, and for those of you who don't understand what landing pages are, it's just basically pages that you dedicate to drive traffic from advertising, online ads to. You're just going to want to make sure you're going to have that Facebook pixel on your website in any pages that you drive traffic to. Okay.
Yes.
And when you do that, what's going to happen is when you start to set up ads through the Facebook business account, the business manager, and of course, like Jacob had said, Facebook owns Instagram. So through the Facebook business manager, where you're going to have the opportunity to actually manage and distribute ads on Instagram as well as Facebook. And so the way that they're going to be able to know the audiences and whether those people have gone to those pages, whether they have done conversions, and I'll talk about conversions in just a moment, is through that Facebook pixel. So that's the key thing that you're going to want to make sure that you do is install that pixel, which again is free, onto your website.
And really quick, one thing I'll tack onto the Facebook pixel, Daniel, before you address this slide, if you have no idea what a Facebook pixel is other than what Daniel just told you, you can actually Google Facebook pixel. There's some really great instructions by Facebook on where to find that in your business manager account and then how to implement it. Facebook is really great. As it has grown and progressed, it offers us those resources. So sharing that with you, if you're like, I don't know where to start, but I now know what it is, there you go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Jacob is the absolute genius in our agency for all the things advertising. So I'm going to probably not do as good as a job as him, but I'm sure going to try my best. So where we're talking about Facebook best practices. So one of the key things you're going to want to do, if you have a large database, right? And so database might be an email list or a customer list. If you have their email addresses, that's incredibly valuable. One of the things that you have the opportunity to do is you can actually upload your email list, your entire email list, into Facebook. And what it'll do is it'll match all of the people that have Facebook accounts to the email addresses. And so it varies on the success of matches because sometimes people use personal emails or sometimes they have multiple email addresses. So you're not going to get a 100% match. If you upload, say, 10,000 email addresses, you're not going to get 10,000 people they'll match. It's usually around like 30% or so. But the great thing is this, is if you have a list that's large, you're going to immediately be able to create an audience and target your either past customers, your current customers, or your prospects right from what you already have at your own resources. If you don't have a large list, that's totally fine too. You'll be able to create your own audience. And when you create your own audience, you'll be able to go through, and there's different things inside Facebook that will give you the opportunity to do so based off of geographic area, based off of interests, all those things we talked about in the prior slide in the beginning of the presentation. So those pain points, things like that, Facebook will guide you through that. You'll be able to choose your audiences. Okay. And then what you're going to want to do is once you set up your creative, your ad, so that's, you know, any of the copy or the image, or if you're going to use a video, all of those options are available to you, is what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to look at opportunities that you can also, of course, have retargeting. And so some of the things that Jacob has in this presentation here, talking about retargeting, is the time on their site. So, or time on your site, how long they've been on your site. And so there's little tips and tricks that you can do there. And so you can have things that if they've been on your site for a certain amount of time, you can trigger a conversion or a pixel from that Facebook pixel. And then you can make certain that, hey, if someone hasn't spent more than 30 seconds on my website, I don't want to have them go into this next retargeting audience because they were only there for a second. How much time could they have learned anything about my business if it was under 30 seconds? And so you can start to do those kind of things. So they're a little bit more advanced, but you can do that. You can also look at, you know, obviously your Facebook page engagement, people that have liked your content, shared your content. Same thing with Instagram because it's the same platform. And then you can also look at, you know, those people that have watched videos, people that have subscribed to your email list, and like I was just talking about, the events from the pixel, if they were doing certain things. I will say one other thing that I think is really important, especially when you're using the Facebook pixel, is to have the opportunity to set where is their success, right? So if they come from your ad, you've already created your ad, you've created your audience, and you've turned your ad on, and they've gone from there, they see your ad on Facebook, they click on it, well, they're going to end up somewhere, right? And ideally, they would end up on a dedicated web page you've created that talks about more in depth of whatever your ad said, right? I'll give you a very silly example. If you say, hey, I've got a great recipe for, the juiciest hamburger. If they click on that ad, the page they should go to better darn be the whole information, like here's how you're going to create the juiciest hamburger. I've got the recipe and here's the ingredients, and you're going to want to opt in, and I'm going to give you the whole recipe and steps as long as your grocery list right here in this PDF. Just give me your name and email address. Okay, so that kind of makes sense. We kind of call it the sniff test. You got to make sure that from the ad, they go to the page that has more information specifically about whatever the ad is talking about. Okay, and if you're running an ad that's dumping them to your homepage, that's like saying, hey, I want to talk to you about the juiciest hamburger recipe, but first I'm gonna drop you off at the front of the grocery store. Good luck, right? Well, I don't even know where to start. I don't know what to buy. It's too many options, and what I'm gonna do is probably walk away and go back in my car and drive home, right? You don't want people to leave your site or wherever you've sent them from your paid ad, which costs you money, if because there's not the right content there.
I will say, this is Jacob again. Thank you, Daniel. I apologize, I lost internet. Man, that's tough. I will say, to Daniel's point, making sure that at the end of the day, we're leading with value at all parts of the funnel, and creative really is king. And so making sure that we're testing new creative and copy consistently is going to significantly improve your marketing strategies, whether that is Google or Facebook or LinkedIn. And so this is a high level point. We could dive into this very deep, but from all of the accounts that I audit on Facebook and Google and other marketing accounts, this is where most businesses struggle, is speaking to customers at all parts of the funnel and having good creative and ad copy testing. Because the key to winning with digital marketing is consistent testing. You test and you test and you split test, and you let your tests drive your actions and optimizations in the account. We don't want to make changes based on what we think will do well. We want the data to point us in that direction. And that's very important.
I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next slide, if that's okay with you, Jacob.
That's okay. Anyways, Google conversion tracking. So we talked at the very beginning about how important it is to have good conversion tracking in place. We've talked about channels, we've talked about a lot of things today, but bringing it back to home, if you're going to start spending money, your valuable ad dollars, you need to make sure that you can track whether it's successful or not. And the reason why that's so important for you is because you as a business owner needs to know how successful your ad dollars are, so that you can know, hey, do I scale? Do I add more budget on Facebook or Google? Do I cut back? Do I focus on other channels? So tracking is one of the things that I see that's set up incorrectly in a lot of accounts. So if that's something that you're struggling with, you might want to reach out to a professional to have them look at it. I will say Google Tag Manager is a very simple and easy to use tool that you can use to install tracking. And there's a ton of resources on YouTube where you can actually Google and get great information step-by-step of walking you how to set up your own tracking. If you do have tracking in place, that's great. That's awesome. But if you have never started tracking before, YouTube is a valuable resource, or you can always reach out to an agency or professional to help you do this for you.
Yeah, and I'm going to add one thing to the conversion thing for you, Jacob. So I was talking about on the Facebook, and this is directly correlated to the Google, the conversion tracking. So obviously Google has their own little piece of code, right, that you'll install on your website as well. But for those who are like, well, what's a conversion, right? And Jacob, chime in with me on this one, right? So if they're coming from the ad, they've already got the ad live, and the ad is sending them to a dedicated page where this person can learn more about the topic, right? On that page, you're going to want this person to do something. You're not going to send paid traffic for them to do nothing, right? Just to read. So you're usually going to say, hey, I'm going to give you something of value for free in exchange for your name or email address, sometimes phone number, right? Now, in other cases that you might ask them to call you, or it could be book an appointment and let's have a deeper conversation. Whatever that ask is, that's the conversion. If they actually do that thing, they have converted, right, from a prospect to now they've called you, they've scheduled an appointment, they've given you their name and their contact information. They are now a lead, right? Prospect is you don't have their information. A lead is now you have their information. That's the conversion. And so what Jacob was talking about, why it's so important to have that conversion tracking, is because that's when you know what's working and what isn't working. If you don't know who's converting, well, you have no idea what to scale. Does that make sense for everybody?
And I think,
oh, sorry, Jacob, go ahead.
I think this is a hot button for a lot of businesses because this isn't done properly in many cases. So having the peace of mind knowing you're tracking well is going to just set yourself up for success from day one. Because if things fail, because some tests, not every test is successful. So if tests fail, you can get the data and learn from that failed test and then make optimizations to improve and to drive more success.
Yeah.
My big recommendation.
Oh, go ahead, Alison.
Thanks, Daniel. My big recommendation here is make the tracking strategy a part of your overarching strategy. So you decide what the copy in your ads is, what the creative is, and what landing page you're pointing people to. And to Daniel's point earlier, what action do you want them to take on said landing page? So your tracking gets implemented for that action and for any and all other actions that you're driving people to for a campaign. Gentlemen, we're getting close on our time. We could spend a lot more time here because, as we said earlier, that's where rubber meets the road for reporting. Go ahead and tell a little bit about the BBB case study. Good, perfect. And so how does it all come together when you've done all these things linearly well? And I'll kind of quickly set this up. So last summer, our BBB was seeking to bring on a new agency, and a sister BBB, so to speak, in Florida had worked with Built by Love, and they had developed a really great strategy for driving leads for consultations with sales teams to the Florida BBB. And there's several Florida BBBs, so one in particular. But in any event, I got to see a presentation that Daniel did with our teammates there at that BBB, and I said, I'm gonna call them, because it felt like watching that presentation, I felt like I was hearing from some of my former agency teammates that really knew their stuff in digital. So we teamed up together and adopted that strategy that had worked so well for the Florida BBB, and then re-engineered it over time in testing for our BBB. So changing out creative frequently. Jacob, roughly every 6-ish weeks at the very beginning, I feel like we had our team creating new campaigns and you guys creating new copy to accompany that ad creative. And here's just a snippet of the case study. Obviously, there's so much more behind just the words you're seeing on this slide, but you guys, from July of 2020 through last week Friday, you see the numbers here, and I've calculated them many times. They are real. They have driven us 471 leads, 197 form submissions, 63 new accredited businesses, so people that actually converted from once clicking on an ad, that brought us over $33,000 in new revenue in the way of those new accredited memberships. That's incredible. I'll tell you, in my time as a digital marketer, I have rarely seen results like that. These folks really know their stuff, and it's continued partnership from our team and their team, synergizing and strategizing through all of this, and then regular testing and optimization is really what has made this possible. So Jacob, what do you want to add? I said it all very quickly.
No, I think the results speak for themselves. We've
They
been able to really hit a home run, and this has been a results-based relationship. And for every one of our clients, that's how I try to establish our partnerships. Is we understand that you need to see results, and so we're going to test and test until we can drive results. And if that's not the case, then we're going to offer recommendations for where else you should spend your marketing dollars. It needs to be a home run for you too.
Indeed.
So I wanted to show you guys briefly just what that strategy looked like, Allison. We did build out lead ads. That's what you're seeing on the screen there. And these are really cool strategy that you can test in your campaigns. You can customize the form. You can pull in your own image. You can add which information you want to collect, business, email, name. I will say as you get more information you're asking for, the larger the gate that they've got to jump open. So if your leads are poor quality, you could try asking for more information. In this case for BBB, we didn't have to. We noticed that name, email, and phone number was the best. And we also set up a Zapier integration. So once those leads were filled out, they were automatically sent to the sales team, and the sales team could contact and follow up those within minutes. Digital marketing can be effective, but if you don't have a good follow-up process with your team, it's not going to help you. So making sure that integration setup was complete, that was a big driver to our success too.
Absolutely. On that really quickly, and again, this could be a whole nother presentation, but we're getting close to our time here. As you develop new marketing campaigns and marketing efforts, ensuring exactly what Jacob just said, making sure that your sales team understands not necessarily the whole slew of the strategy and the setup, but what the messaging is and where the leads are coming from, and that you have, as appropriate or needed, redeveloped the strategy there so that the follow-up is really strong. Jacob indicated it, and in my previous agency life, if you will, prior to BBB, that's where I always saw things fall through for all the companies that I've ever represented in marketing, is that synergy between sales and marketing, and the follow-up was not always there. So taking a stronger look at that and partnering with those teams.
Absolutely. I'm going to add one more thing for you all, and then we're going to get into the agency and freelancer, or should you do it yourself? When you have leads that come in, you need to make sure that you reach out to your leads as fast as possible, okay? The percentages, and I won't get into all the percentages, but the percentages of how fast a lead goes from a hot lead, someone who's really willing and ready to do something, take the next step, starts to die down very, very quickly. So if someone submits some information from your advertisement, whether it's via email, a form, or they call you and you wait a day, statistically, you've lost more than half of the chance of winning that piece of business. So you got to make sure that part of the strategy, and Alison kind of added to that, is that you have a very strong follow-up and that it's fast and efficient. So that way they're getting good customer service and they're wowed by it. And when they're thinking about it and taking action to call you or email you, you're right back on it saying, hey, thanks for contacting us. How can we help? Okay. All right. So I'm going to move through this part kind of quickly. And we usually get these questions quite often. Hey, what's the difference between hiring an agency or a freelancer, which also could be a consultant, or should I just do it myself? And you're going to have all this stuff at the end available to you. But there's a couple questions that I think you should ask yourself. And on all these slides, there's actually a whole blog article I've written. So if you really want to dive into it, you're more than welcome to go there. It's free, of course. But the first thing that you need to ask is the work that you need done, is it mission critical? Is it super, super important? Because if it's super important, that's going to dictate to the level of quality or expertise that you're going to need. And as you probably likely know, the more expert or the more qualified someone is, that's going to dictate typically that they're going to demand more money. It's going to be more expensive. Okay. So that's the first thing you're going to ask. If it's something that's very simple, you know, like, hey, I just need someone, to give you a silly example, to mow my lawn. Can you really mess it up? I mean, I guess you can, but you don't need the world's best lawn mowing gentleman or gentlewoman to mow your lawn, right? You just want it done. So that might be something where you could go to someone that's a freelancer or someone that is not an expert that's accredited in their skills. The next thing is, are they credited? And I kind of already covered that, and I told you I'd move fast through this stuff for you all, but it's really important to make sure that if whatever they're doing is critical to the success of your business, if they're setting up, say, your website, if they're setting up how you're gonna take credit card payments, anything that's really, really important, you're for sure gonna wanna make sure that they have the proof and they're backed up by things like BBB and other organizations that, hey, they really know what they're doing, and they're investing in their skills by making sure that they have those accreditations, okay? The next thing is, especially if you're a small business, and if you're hiring another small business, I mean, that's okay. But one of the things I find a lot of time when I hear stories of clients that maybe at times have had unfortunate circumstances or unfortunate experiences with other marketing agencies, say, well, if you're generating X amount of money, let's just say, for example, $1 million, and this agency isn't generating at least $1 million, they're not even at your level. So why would you hire someone that can't even get to at least your level of business? So you've got to have kind of an even playing field. Now, there are unique circumstances where that not always applies, but usually that's one of the key things you're going to want to look at is, hey, if this person's very successful in their business, either at my level or higher, then they're probably doing something right. And that means that they're going to be able to help elevate my business. Okay.
Indeed.
Do they practice what they preach? Do they eat their own dog food? We're a marketing agency. If we're not running ads, if we're not writing emails, if we're not doing that stuff like creating content, and we're telling our clients to do it, but we're not doing it, there's something wrong there, right? So you got to make sure that whomever you're working with, that they're practicing what they're preaching, and that if you're looking for an amazing marketing experience, that if you are becoming a lead for them, you're witnessing and experiencing that, okay? All right. Do they have an entire team to serve your needs? This is going to go back to what specifically you need to have done, right? And so if you've got a lot of work that needs to be done, and typically, like, I'll use a website as example, you need someone that has design chops, someone that has the visual aesthetic to do graphic design. You need a strong copywriter, someone who can write powerful copy that's going to convey your message well. You need a developer or someone who's technically capable to know the right platform and tools and to get it online. And then you're likely going to need a professional advertiser to get it out there to the world to get you leads. So there's all these different people just for a website, right? So you just need to make sure that whomever you hire, that they have the right team members in place to serve you. And that's going to be critical for anything that you do across the board. Case studies, right? Do they have case studies to show that they're testimonials, that they know what they're doing? And then even more, do they have video testimonials? And so this is kind of like I'm a little bit of a stickler on that one. It's one thing to have a testimonial, but it's another thing to actually see and hear from a past client or customer. And you can actually read their body language. You can get so much more than just reading a little blip of like, hey, they're great, right? So that's very powerful. And how long have they been in business? And there's just two more after this, but especially in the digital marketing world, it's fine if someone's new. There's nothing wrong with that. But for someone who's been around for a while and they've been in business for a few years, especially a few years in digital marketing where the landscape keeps changing, you have to have someone that knows what they're doing. They've seen it. They've seen it 1,000 times and they know the solution. So they're not trying to figure out the solution using your money to try to figure that out and learn along the way. You need someone who knows their stuff. They've been there, they've done that, right? Kind of like if you're gonna go have like some kind of surgery, right? You probably want the doctor who's like, I've done this for the last 20 years. I've done this 1,000 times, like you're gonna be fine, rather than the doctor's like, I just graduated from medical school. You're gonna be my first person that I'm gonna do surgery on. Are you excited? You're gonna be like, no, I don't think I am, right? Okay. Qualifying question 9, do they have a pre-built foundation? So really what that means is, do they have a formula for success? They don't have a proven formula for success and they're trying to create one for you without like any proven like blueprint. You're gonna probably, you're gonna want to think about that, okay? And then finally, kind of, this is kind of the fun one, but You got to enjoy who you work with, especially if it's costing you time and money. And then you want to make sure they're smarter than you, right? And so if they're smarter than you, they're going to give you more insight, more value, and make you think of different ways that you never thought of. And that's exactly why you want to hire people that are smarter than you, is because that's what you're really paying for, is that value, that knowledge that you don't have the time to learn. They've learned that for you. Okay, all right. So there's a list of questions there for you all that you'll have at your disposal with this PowerPoint presentation that comes out. Setting yourself up for success. So a couple things, and I'm just going to whip through this, and Jacob, if you want to add anything quickly, let me know. But what you're going to want to make sure is you verify your website domain with the Facebook Business Manager. You're going to want to make sure that you prioritize your conversion events. We already talked about this throughout the entire presentation, is make sure you're delivering value. Value delivers trust, and that's the long-standing relationship that's always going to win for you in marketing and sales. And Google and Facebook are going to continue to get smarter, right? We all know that. And so you're going to want to make sure that you invest in those platforms, learn about those resources, and make sure you have a presence in both of those platforms. Free resources we promised to you. So the first free resources are everything that my team and I have developed for you. And so don't worry about trying to write these down. If you watch this, this will be available to you, and those links will be active for you. But we got a ton of free resources. And then additionally, we have a ton of free resources that are offered by Google and Instagram and Facebook, and all of those are going to be available for you all to have after watching this. Finally, is I just really want to thank you. I know we've had some snafus with technology. You got to love that. So thank you for bearing with us. And if there's any questions you have, either now or after, do not hesitate to reach out. We'll do our best to answer those questions.
Daniel, Jacob, thank you so much. We've already got a comment and says extremely helpful session. Thank you so much. You're so welcome. Thank you, Mary, for that and for attending. Casey, do we have any comments, questions in the chat that we should address? Casey's been monitoring that for us while we, troubleshoot it on tech, which we do all day, every day in our roles, folks.
Not yet, but
I got one.
Oh, we've got one in the room. Okay, I'll repeat it just in case.
Facebook advertising B2B, is that the right way to go? Should you be for B2B advertising Facebook?
Facebook advertising, is that the right way to go for business to business marketing and advertising?
It can be very powerful, but you might find that LinkedIn will be a very valuable channel for B2B. Now, I will say that LinkedIn is pretty dang expensive. Just to give you a point of reference, a lot of clients I encourage to spend to not even try LinkedIn unless they have a larger ad budget of at least $5,000 a month or more. The reason why that is just because it's very expensive. Cost per click is average $6 to $15. So just making sure that you can clearly, before you test on LinkedIn, clearly identify your target audience well will make sure that LinkedIn is a success for you.
Yeah, I'll add to one thing for that too, because everything Jacob said is obviously spot on, right? If you want to try Facebook, and Facebook typically is the cheapest platform to advertise on out of the ones that we've mentioned, right? I'm not going to get into YouTube or things like that, but Facebook is usually the cheapest. One of the things you might want to do, because Facebook again is going to be long term. You're not gonna find some immediately on Facebook. It's going to take a little bit of time. You're going to have to do some retargeting and things like that. But in your ad copy, what you can do is you can actually call out the people that you're looking for, right? Dog owners, check out this amazing dog care, right? And it's like, if I don't have a dog, I have a cat, I'm not going to click on that ad because it says dog owners, right? And so that's a way that you as an advertiser can try to keep your costs down, but target the people on Facebook, obviously, for who you're going after.
I always love those ads because I feel like they're talking to me.
Yeah.
Like, oh, they're calling dog lovers, check.
And in some cases, on Facebook, so if you're a business, if you have a hard time building out an audience on Facebook for your ideal customer, because I do run into this sometimes, it's like, well, I can't really identify them well with the behaviors and with what Facebook gives me. That doesn't mean Facebook won't work. It just means it will be a little bit more difficult, and you'll have to adjust your strategy by going after broader audience like Daniel is talking about, but have very, very targeted ad copy. So you're speaking to and calling out that individual customer, and then you bring them in that way. And then through your remarketing and follow-up, you can help drive the conversion action you're looking for.
And Jacob, to that, just to set a reference for that funnel that we talked about today, that is a really good strategy for an awareness campaign, especially starting out in paid strategies.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're going to create an ad online, right? So if it's Facebook or Instagram, I'll give you a little trick of the trade. So if you ever see a TV commercial, print ad, or an online ad, whomever that is pictured in that advertisement is their ideal customer they're going after, okay? So perfect thing is if you're watching television this evening and you see, one of those pharmaceutical ads and you see the people on that ad, that's the audience they're going after. Because the idea and the strategy is that you look at that person in that ad and you're like, that's me. I can relate to that person. And so that's exactly what they want to do, is try to create alignment. So one of the things that you may want to do, especially if you're trying to do B2B online and you're going to use Facebook as one of your channels to try to advertise your business, is try to make sure that whatever creative, whatever photography, whether it's stock photography or whatever, that it's going to attract the right people. Okay. Just we want to make sure you do those things.
And let me tack on to that really quickly, because here we are in the world that we're in, talking so much about diversity. If you have multicultural audiences that your brand or business wants to attract, make sure that people can see themselves in those ads, in that photography. That is a big piece of that diversity dialogue right now. So please make sure that you are evaluating that and looking at that really hard in your marketing.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really valuable point. Does anyone else have any other questions? We'd love to answer anything.
Can Jacob talk a little bit more about, he mentioned if it's a newer business and you're creating a strategy for keywords and what that looks like, but those keywords don't exist yet, I'd like you to talk a little bit more about that, unpack that, because that's really interesting. Especially now, in 2020, 2021, we have a lot of new businesses that might want that.
Jacob, did you hear that?
Yeah, I heard it.
Okay.
Yeah, keyword campaigns can be so valuable. And the reason why they're so valuable, like we talked about, is it's just you're targeting people that are raising their hand essentially, and they're actively looking for you. Now, like LinkedIn, it can become competitive. I mean, I had a personal injury attorney lawyer that I was running ads for in the past, and our cost per click was $150 a click. So you can imagine how expensive that is. Now, I've also run ads for a locksmith, and it's like less than $1 a click. So it just, as far as how much you're paying per keyword, that will largely depend on how competitive those words are. But when I'm building out a keyword strategy, I'm doing it with a couple things in mind. The first is intent, like we talked about. So what is the intent? What are they searching? And you can use that keyword planner tool to get keyword ideas. And then when you actually select the keywords you want to target, look at the search volume, look at the cost per click, think about the intent, then pick your keyword and structure your campaign that way. As far as like actual structure, usually you're going to want to start with exact match keyword. And there's a lot of resources online. You can learn more about what these match types are. But exact match basically means if I'm looking for BBB and I type in BBB, I'm showing up, those are exactly matched, and my ad is showing. So that is one of the most high intent type of searches, because we are showing for exactly what you searched. So when I'm building campaigns, I like to start with exact matched and then broad modified or phrase match as well. So
for any of you that are thinking about, what should you do and what's going to work, what kind of budget, one of the things you're going to want to think about is, what is your average sale? Okay. So if you're a consultant, that's going to be pretty easy. You're going to say, well, I charge X amount per hour and my engagement is always 4 hours, right? So you're going to know that number. If it's something else like, a subscription service or whatever, just figure out whatever the average is across the last 12 months. You can do that math pretty simply and figure out what your average sale is. And then if you say, okay, I know my average sale is, let's just say $1,000, right? So then you actually have a baseline to say, okay, if I get 100 leads, and out of the 100 leads, I get one person that converts, and that average conversion, I know my average sale is going to be $1,000, right? Then you would probably be able to say safely, I can spend $1,000 a month safely, knowing that the propensity of, if I get 100 leads and one of them converts, I know that's my break even. And it's a very low barrier for a break even. Now, if you're getting 10 leads and you're getting one conversion, that's still good, but those numbers make it much tougher, right? The percentages start to go up for success, or I should say for failure, right? And so you're just going to look at those things, because we always get those questions a lot of times is, well, I don't know how much I should spend. And well, I got a bunch of leads, but those leads didn't convert to customers. Leads are valuable, and the lead should hold a monetary value for you, because if you're doing the right sales procedure, right, you're going to continue to communicate, add value. And what's going to happen is some of those leads who didn't convert should convert the following month or the month after. And so actually, that's how you're going to start to grow. And that's how you become into a multiplier effect of how ads start to work very, very powerfully if you're doing the right strategy.
I'm going to add a quick other layer thinking to that. The same rules that Daniel just shared totally apply. But if you're thinking, well, I'm not a sales-based organization. For example, I've marketed for businesses in the past that they get government funding for treating so many people, if it's medical related, or so many people in seats, for example, whatever that might mean. Education is often based that way as a metric, right? And so think about, okay, I have to have this many people in seats to get this much funding. That's your sale figure, and then calculating how much you might spend on advertising, like Daniel was talking about. So
and the marketing math is extremely important, because it helps you understand how successful your ad strategy is going to be. And sometimes we get businesses that don't know what their marketing math is. They've never run ads before, and that's completely okay. But just know that you need to have the expectation that you're going to be learning and testing into what that marketing math is over the next 30, 60, 90 days to figure that out with digital ads. We take some clients on, they already know what it is. They know what their average order value is, what their expected conversion rate is, or their cost to acquire a new customer. And that can be utilized in the strategy. But if you don't know any of that stuff, that's okay. Get as much as you can. And then when you begin testing with ads, you can begin to put those pieces together. Because I would love every campaign that I launch to just drive success in the first 30 days. But that's not always the case. There's a ramp up period, and it does take time. So with patience and consistent testing, and if you're targeting your customer well and you really are leading with value, you should see success.
You bet.
I'll give just a very brief example. So obviously we're a marketing agency. There's an education curve for a business owner to say, should I hire an agency? Which agency? Of course, there's a cost involved. There's a setup time for the agency to get everything ready to go for that new client. And so we realize that on average, it's anywhere from 60 days to 6 months for that buying cycle. Okay, so I'm talking about the customer buying. Now, in an extreme case, a buying cycle for a pack of gum might be literally a minute. I'm at the checkout counter of the grocery store, I see a pack of gum. Yep, I'm gonna do that too. It's only $1, there you go, right? Minimal time, thought, or risk to buy that pack of gum. But something like a marketing agency, it takes a long time, right? And so we set our parameter for our ads that we know it's gonna take 6 months for that lead to convert. So what does that mean? You're saying, well, I don't understand. What does that mean for advertising? Well, what that means is that we are going to continually spend on advertising month after month. We're talking thousands of dollars going out the door on ads. and we're not expecting to see any sale from that ad until month 7. That's when our buying cycle, and that's when we start to go back and say, we just spent $10,000. What's that look like on month 7? And if we get a conversion, then actually that $10,000 spent typically on average works out for us. We're at break even, but it's a long cycle. Most businesses don't have that long of a cycle. Yours might be 30 days, but I want you to think about that. What's your buyer's cycle? How long does it take for someone from the second that they talk to you to they buy? Okay. And if it's a referral, it's going to be much quicker than someone who's a stranger. Advertising online, those are going to be strangers. Okay. You're going to have to figure that out. And then you're going to have to think about, okay, if I turned on ads for a month and nothing really worked, well, are you looking at the right buyer cycle? Is that buying cycle 60 days, 90 days? What happens if you turn your ads off on 60 days and it takes 90 days for them to buy? You just spent a bunch of money and you could have actually got them to convert, but you broke the chain of events. So something just to think about for you all.
Absolutely. Gentlemen, even with our tech challenges, we've run a little bit over, but almost broke even on time. Thank you so much for all of the information. We could go so much longer. We have so much more we could tell folks, but for those of you attending today, I highly encourage you to reach out to Daniel and Jacob and take advantage of. You may have seen it, even though we breezed quickly by the resources slide, and you'll get this later. Reach out to them and consider a free consultation with them, which they offer. You'd only be scratching the surface, no doubt, and all of this until you should bring them on, but I highly recommend having them take a look at and giving you recommendations. So thank you both for sharing your expertise and for being with us today on the phone and virtual and all the things because of our tech challenges, but here we are. So thank you both. We appreciate you very much.
It's been an honor. Thank you for having us, and all of the attendees. Thank you for investing some of your precious time with us today. It's a blessing, so thank you.